I'm excited. I recently fulfilled all the requirements for the IBF ACPF. I'm now officially and finally an advanced certified forecasting professional. Add to that their designation certificate in S&OP and IBP. So now I am CPIM, CPF, ACPF, and certified S&OP. And according to my wife, a doctor in BS. May still need a few more designations to catch up to Andrew and Steven, but I'm working on it. Let's get to it. Welcome. Another fabulous episode of IBF On Demand. I'm your multifaceted, entertaining, and educational host, Eric Wilson. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That is eric@ibf.org. My apologies, I will not make it to VidCon this year. I know you're disappointed, but you can find me in Chicago in June. We got an upcoming conference there about S&OP in June, so check out that at ibf.org. You can find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. That's where this is available as well. We do have a sponsor for today, Arkiva, your one-plan S&OP software solution, so check them out as well. And I said I do hope I see you in Chicago at all the other conferences as well. IBF has a lot going on. We actually do trainings now, customized in-houses. We have conferences. We have boot camps. There's a lot going on right now with IBF, so please continue to check them out at ibf.org. IBF also does in-house training specifically for organizations as well. We actually did a training, actually multiple trainings for a company called Beam Santori. I actually wanted to bring them on, and doesn't hurt that they also do bourbon, and I'm from Kentucky. So I thought it's a great opportunity to bring someone on who's got a vast experience developing programs inside organizations, working with change management, building world-class teams. I wanted to bring him on and talk a little bit about building teams, what it takes to do, and how do you keep employees engaged, especially through large transformation type projects. Michael is a multifaceted leader who believes that executive teams achieve greater success through collaborative cross-functional partnerships and achieve greater purpose within a corporate culture, becoming the competitive advantage, not merely an enabler of business objectives. He is the Senior Director of North American Sales and Operations Planning at Beam Santori. Previously, he experienced with Kellogg's, Kraft, Heinz, Mondelez. He has served on the business unit leadership teams that achieved world-class business metrics. And at Kraft, he was People Manager of the Year in 2013. Please help me welcome Michael. So welcome, Michael, to the podcast.
All right. Thanks for having me, Eric. Pleasure to be here.
It's kind of ironic as I'm sitting here in my bunker in Kentucky, heartland of bourbon, and the horse capital of the world. You actually have to be in Chicago right now, so it's unfortunate for you.
Yeah, we'll have to switch that up one time. So maybe we'll come down there and you come up here. So we'll figure that out.
Well, I'm actually going to be up there in June. We're going to have S&OP conference. So I'll be up in June. Hopefully you stick around because I'd like for you to be at that conference as well. I'd love to hear you as one of the speakers there.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks, Eric.
Okay. Well, I'm happy you can join me. I know you've got a long history. You were actually with Beam Santori now, so the reason we were kind of the ode to bourbon there at the very beginning. But you got a long career, successful career, managing teams, putting together processes. It's quite impressive, some of the things you did. One of the things that I kind of, the reason I wanted to have you on the show was you've actually put together world-class organizations, especially around S&OP, and with that comes a lot of change management, getting people engaged, keeping people engaged, continually growing the process. Those are all challenges people see. I'm going to start off with a tough one. How do you really accomplish that of bringing those teams together and keeping them engaged through a process? What's the secret sauce with that?
The secret sauce. All right. Well, jump right in. And I think For me, it's about, this is my fourth S&OP implementation, and the only thing that's constant is each one's different. But the one thing that is constant is, establishing structure. At Beam Centauri, we're implementing a 5-stage global S&OP process as your starting point. But, it comes down to that structure of here's the process. And really, from a change management standpoint, usually starts with leadership embracing that change. And then from there, each business is always going to be a little bit different, right? So for me, the next two steps are assembling that team, making sure that you really understand from a skill set assessment, where are we in the current process? And then from there, start developing the talent. And team building starts immediately. It's getting to know each other. It's making sure we understand from a training perspective, where's a common language, a common platform, and then working with development plans for everybody, right? For me, it's continuously improving.
So you mentioned the training aspect of there, but you also mentioned the getting everybody talking different languages. You kind of talked that one as well. That's something that I've always found as one of the bigger challenges when you're especially doing an S&OP process. It's a cross-functional process. You have a lot of different functions that have a lot of different languages. So how do you talk the same languages? How do you kind of break down those barriers of getting people in the different parts of the organization speaking the same things?
Eric, that's a great question. So I think for me, the first real tool that we use is creating a small but empowered cross-functional team. We're talking about change management. It's about breaking down those functional silos. I always like to kind of lead into S&OP where, you have the functions as your verticals, right? And S&OP, what we're trying to do is connect all those so we cut across horizontally. And to do that, what you want to make sure is that you have a change management team. It's your cross-functional leaders. It's a small group, right? And you're going to drive into decision-making, problem-solving, and really teaching the organization the implication of saying yes. It's yes and, right? And what you're do with that team is making sure that everyone's taking off their functional hats. We're coming together collectively to solve business problems.
You mentioned that yes and. I mean, I'd love to expand upon that. What's kind of that concept behind that yes and, or having everybody speaking yes?
I think it starts with, it's a basic principle, the one number principle, right? Lots of people talk about that. But what it gets to when you're driving to business decisions, you get grounded in facts. You understand the situation. When you say yes and, what you're effectively doing is creating scenario planning. So when you get the cross-functional leaders together, you're developing these processes, you can get to scenario planning quickly, and you do that with data, but more importantly, really taking off function. Everyone has business experience. You want to draw upon that business experience and not just stay within your lane. I think for me, it's pushing organizations to scenario planning is the biggest power of S&OP. And from a change management perspective, that's why I've always liked to use these cross-functional change management teams.
Okay, so, I mean, how do you prevent those yes ands being, yes, but? I mean, this is what I want. This is what our function wants to do. And so, yeah, you could do that, but this is what I want to. How do you really start getting to those ands and consensus? I mean, I know you've touched on it, but it seems to continue to be an obstacle I hear from organizations. That's what we're trying to break down and get to, that consensus. How do we get there?
Yeah, again, great questions, Eric. I think for me, my experience is we often see this in many organizations. You have these black boxes of data. So where's it's my data, it's not your data. Well, we all work for the same company, and it's for me, it's the democratization of data. And I think it's the hardest part of change management is that first time you come in and we're coming across horizontally again, you're kind of shining that transparency light on issues, right? And you can boil the ocean, but it's what are the two or three things different that would need to happen to say yes. And when you really make data available, what you're doing is taking that emotion out. At first, you don't, right? Every change and challenge in S&OP is you're bringing that transparency, and you often have some, different reactions in the business. So, it comes back to metrics, KPIs. Do we all understand that this is the way that metric and it makes sense? So really it's around data, and that data, when everyone's looking at it the same way, really tends to take that emotion out of the business. You get to fact-based decision making.
Okay. Now, I love that your approach is really creating that change management aspect and that small structured team that's really advocates for, and I'm assuming a cross-functional team. Is that correct? That what you're looking at is cross-functional small team that really is the advocate for it. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not the whole. We're running the process, but what you're having is this cross-functional group of leaders focused on change management. What's working? What's not working?
Yeah.
If you see a 13 chain email reply, it's probably someone doesn't understand something in the process. That's our opportunity to use that example, and let's talk about it. Let's find solutions. And you're still running your process. This is a collaborative group solving problems of really communication. If you think about it, it's the change management is effective communication. So how do we solve some of these problems? And that's where you get the benefit of these cross-functional leaders.
And that's why I agree. I recommend change management as a critical piece of any kind of transformation project, S&OP implementation. You're going to need it. And with change management, generally you have creating some type of vision, structuring the process, communication. You mentioned in there as well. Those are all celebrating wins when they occur. I'm assuming you're running the full gamut, including training in there as well, getting people up to speed, level set, talking the same language, training as a component of it as well.
Yeah, I think early on when we talked about we had that structure of S&OP, then you're going to assess kind of where you're at, and then it just naturally leads you to training. It can be internal training, external training, and that's an important piece because that helps set what's a development plan. How are we going to continuously improve?
Okay. Now, you mentioned internal and external training. You actually utilize those programs before for management purposes as far as your teams and building your teams as well. Do you see an impact on talent when you look at internal and external training?
Yeah, I think, having different perspective is important. And obviously, we use a balance of internal and external. The internal training is that common language. How are we looking at things? When you invite external training, you're bringing a different perspective into the organization. And, sometimes it's good to hear from someone else. It's good to hear a common platform. For me, bringing in that external position and training early on is making sure that everyone has that common language. And even though you know it, are you saying it the same way? Are you talking about it? Hey, I have a problem. I think, I've always said the best demand planners are former supply planners, and the best supply planners, former demand planners. What you're doing, and, in our experience, even at Beam this past summer, what we did is we held the training on really external training on demand planning, but we brought our finance partners, we brought our supply chain partners into that training session. It's not just about demand planning. Again, we're talking about cross-functional. Having empathy in a business helps foster solutions. So I think, if I'm just standing in front of the team talking about here's how we demand plan, it's really not bridging into those cross-functional areas. I think when you bring someone from the outside, you really start getting at that root cause of understanding the handoffs. Are they happening? Understanding, hey, this is a pain point for me, but you're doing it all with that common language. And for me, that's the most important benefit of using external training is, that different point of view, but getting to that common language.
So if you had to boil it up to what was the biggest benefit for your employees, taking them through some type of external training, what do you think the biggest benefit they got out of it was?
I think the biggest benefit was seeing, the impact on others, and how when we make changes in our demand, how that's impacting supply. And then when we value it, how it impacts finance. I think in our organization, it's making sure that it's not just demand supply. There's other parts that we're impacting, whether it's, our product innovation, finance. It is an end-to-end process, right? And we sometimes get trapped in those little silos, and it's our job to, break those down. You know, then what you do is take that and live the process. You can't just live in training, right? Then it comes then for another assessment, right? And then check where you're going to go from there. So it's a continuous loop, and it's starting with a common platform for knowledge, pushing that forward, but then experience it through doing.
And that's interesting because I get talking to a lot of people, I get very similar type of answers as far as those big benefits they get. We can actually measure benefits inside organizations as well as productivity and forecast accuracy, and we can actually see benefits as well. And those don't really come as the first thing; those really become the secondary, tangible benefits that they see as well. Do you see those type of benefits in the people going through productivity and performance and their knowledge base increasing? Are those benefits that you're getting as well?
Yeah, I think, Eric, what you tend to see once you start getting, more mature in your process is, and one thing that I like to do is track how many meetings go away, right? If we're following the process, we're communicating effectively, right? It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Where I think a lot of times when we think of process, it's more meetings, it's more time. It's actually quite the opposite. And your best metric is effective communication. And that's really at the heart of S&OP. So meetings do go away when you're effective at it.
Okay. I want to turn the question to you, actually, because you yourself, you've actually gone through IBF conferences, training, Beam Centauri's done, but you yourself have gone through some conferences and training as well. So what was the biggest thing that you think you got out of the conference that you went to, or the training that you had, or the event that you went to? What do you benefit from?
Yeah, I think there's two things that would stand out for me. I touched on one of them. Internally, it's, again, I'll just touch on, is that empathy to foster solutions. It's making sure that when you're doing training, we are bringing individuals from other parts of the organization into these trainings. There's a huge benefit to doing that. I think when we think of external training or external conferences, it's, again, understanding what's your peer set doing? What are other organizations? It's, in this space, it's not static, and you learn things from other people. And that's that benefit of bringing a different perspective. Otherwise, you're kind of trapped into doing things the way you've always done, right? And you're trying to get those different ideas. Even if they don't, it gets you, thinking about what's a potential different way that you haven't thought of.
So has IBF been a good partner then as far as bringing some of those expertise and training in?
I think IBF is a great partner because, there's the theory part, but I think where the team really benefited from, our initial training is working through some problems. This isn't just textbook. We worked through, spent, half a day working through real business problems. So, and that's that application, right? And really driving that forward. And then where I see us going in the future is then using, okay, we did the training, we had development. Now assess yourself. Did you achieve those goals? What are the new ones? And what's that next area of success that we want to drive forward?
Okay. We've hyped a lot about the training. Getting back to some of the change management or the management things that you do from a manager perspective, what are some other things you talked about assessing and really building your team and having your team grow? What are some other key things you'd like the audience as far as focus on to help build a better team? What's some of the things they can look at?
I think, starting is get to know each other. I mean, it's like you're working together, and, your job, people should love their jobs. It should be fun. It's you almost become this mini family, right? Your work family we're going through and understanding what all that is. Start from, again, how do you know each other, and then build from there, so that really it's collaboration, right? And it's all about teamwork.
Okay. So I got one final question. I got time for another final question. And I think this is probably the most important question that I have, being that you're with Beam Samtori and I'm here in Kentucky. I'm going to have to ask you,
Okay.
do you have a favorite bourbon drink? And what exactly would that drink be?
Well,
The audience is dying to know.
Yeah, Eric, that is not a tough question at all. I mean, it's long before Beam, I've always really loved Maker's Mark. So, whether it's a great old fashioned or just Maker's on the rocks, that was kind of like a layup for me. That was an easy discussion. I think you got to love the brands you work for. I certainly do. I've had the fortune of working with great brands, and at Beam Suntory, we great brands, and I've always loved Maker's Mark. So that one's easy.
Yeah, Maker's a great bourbon. And full disclosure, I always loved kind of a Kentucky lemonade, a version of a Lynchburg lemonade, but with Jim Beam instead of the other Tennessee whiskey that's out there. Yeah. I prefer to use it with Jim Beam, kind of a Lynchburg lemonade with Jim Beam. I've always kind of a go-to during the summer. It's a nice, refreshing drink that I've always enjoyed. So you can check that one out as well with my audience.
With the weather warming up, nothing better than in the summer a nice highball. So a good Jim Beam highball.
Hey, so, there you go. That works as well. And I guess you have some Canadian things going on up there too, but that's whiskey. That's not bourbon. So, hey, I want to thank you, Mike. It was a great insight you have into change management, managing teams. Also about the training aspect, which is kind of what I wanted to focus on. You did a great job kind of explaining the benefits of it, much better than I probably could as well. So I'm glad I had you on to be able to give those insights. So I want to thank you very much, Mike. As far as last things to leave my audience with, type thing, if they have a team, they don't have the training, what's kind of that first step you'd recommend to them to be able to do to start a training program, either externally or internally? What's the first thing they need to do, probably, you think?
Yeah, Eric, again, in summary, thanks for having me on. I think assess your situation, understand where you're at from skills, people, and how you're going to form that team, and then how are you going to develop them. I mean, for me, it's around those development plans to get to that end goal. And for me, training's always been that vital first step in helping with that common language. So that's what I'd leave the audience with.
And then reach out to IBF.
Yes,
so thank you very much, Michael. It's great to have you on. And hopefully I'm going to see you in Chicago in June then. I'm going to hopefully see you then.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
it. Thank you. Okay, bye
now.
Great interview there with Michael. Hope you learned a little bit about team building, a little bit about developing, a little bit about training as well. But also maybe a little bit about bourbon at the end there as well. So it was exciting, conversation we had with Michael. I mentioned that when I came on board of companies, part of my negotiation was, hey, I'd like to attend at least one external event a year, and that was one of the things I did. Speaking as a leader and as a manager, one of the things I also did at most every company that I developed my teams and actually built out organizations was I had my teams, one of their goals that came up in employee reviews that I did was they had to attend an external conference. I wanted them to get out of the office. I wanted them to see how other companies were doing things and not get in this rut with blinders on of this is the only way we could do it. I wanted them to bring new ideas to the table. I wanted to show them that I was investing in them as well and could send them to Orlando or Scottsdale, Arizona for a conference, and that I appreciated what they did. I did those things because it worked both ways. They gained the knowledge, but they also seen that I was investing in them as well. Because I'm telling you, if you're not willing to invest, $3, $4, $5 at most probably in an employee every year, then you're going to get what you don't pay for eventually. And you're going to get the employee that only knows how to do things the way it's been done inside those four walls, doesn't think critically, and doesn't really, and starts to become less engaged and less productive in their job. They don't grow in their position. That's what you're going to end up with. The ROI is definitely there for training programs to consider some types of external education. Studies show there's about a 10% improvement on productivity by properly training and externally training your employees. 10% improvement on productivity. Compare this to about a 3.4% improvement gained by technology. So you can get a 3.5% improvement by throwing software at it, or you can get a 10% improvement on your people by throwing educational training at them. Where's your better ROI there? It will pay for itself. And when you're looking at training, every Fortune 500 company has a recognized CPF professional working there. So this is a great opportunity to give the fundamentals. There's lots of options out there. I don't want to say we're the only one. No, there's a lot of great options. There's a lot of great organizations that do some good training. Experiment every now. Try some other types of organizations and bring some different ideas to the table. That's one option. You can design your own program that you want and take some pieces from others and really fine tune it to inside your organization so you can design your own. If you want help, IBF is just one option of a wide range of companies out there that can do this. And IBF can actually come into your organization and do some of that customized training. From anywhere from 8 to 800 people, we can actually do a customized training for you. Anything from a gambit of fundamentals of business forecasting and planning to an S&OP, IBP essentials and next level training, to an introduction to supply and demand management, advanced planning and forecasting and with predictive analytics, do a new product forecasting and planning. There's other customized programs, do an executive session as well. All those are capable of just coming in and doing inside your organization or customizing pieces and parts of those to make something that really fits what you're trying to accomplish inside your organization there as well. So there's other options. If you don't want to do a customized program in-house, you can send individuals. You can give the options to your individuals to go out. I said I negotiated this when I came into the company. Said I want to go to one external conference and allow them to choose which one they want to go to. There's a lot of conferences out there, boot camps. Mention the May trainings that we have on. They can pick and choose. Those are online. There's no travel necessary for those. And speaking of online, there's a wealth of information and education available online. In the times we are living right now, it's easy to, with a few clicks of a mouse, to be able to find some world-class educational programs. We even have an e-learning program if you're interested in that. But there's a lot of world-class educational programs available that you can take advantage of, whichever function and role you're in. Well, that does it for us. I'm actually going to go learn something and try to earn some more designations. Let me know what you want to learn and what topics you would like me to focus on in the future. Please reach out to me, eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. My name is Eric. This is IBF On Demand. I said we do have a sponsor, Arkiva, your one-plan S&OP software solution. Please check out ibf.org. See all the training, We are a membership organization. We're about you. We're about fostering the growth of predictive analytics, business forecasting, demand planning, S&OP, supply chain, related fields. We're about fostering the growth, and we do that through our vast body of knowledge trainings. So please check it out, see what we have to offer, see how you personally can grow, but see how you can actually utilize it to grow your teams, grow your company then as well. Don't forget the May trainings. There's a whole series to the month of May, a masterclass buffet you can take place in May. So pick and choose what you want to do. I'm actually going to be there for a couple of them as well. So please check those out at ibf.org. And still, remember one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as a kid that I still use today. wash your hands.